Hello, this is Zach. It is currently 3:06 a.m. You know, just can't beat hard work, so uh, that's why I'm up late. But anyway, so for this, this is my final project, or one of them at least. I made. I thought it would be cool to make Mjolnir, which is the name for the Thor's hammer. And I thought this would be cool because I just came back, or I've just saw the last Avengers movie, which and as a huge superhero nerd, it's one of the coolest props out there. And I was intrigued by the lightning. The I based a lot of this. A lot of this is from a tutorial too, from Help, and I have the links here. My sources are as following. This site here, this one right here was very helpful. I followed a lot of that to a certain point, which is how I got the lightning to jitter and do all that. However, the important part, as you said in the assignment, Carlos, is that you can understand it. And what I'm starting to realize is I know how to do these things. I just don't know the specifics of what the things are called. So this tutorial was helpful, for example, in the fact that I knew that this would completely entail resamples scattering. I knew from the get-go that I had to figure out how to get a let me, if I go in the node here, if I go here, I needed to figure out how to get this hammer to scatter, and each point that is covered by the hammer, I needed to figure out how to get it. So not only can I copy, almost in essence, copy to point each lightning line, but have it so they're all different. And obviously I knew I was going to have to add a noise node or an attribute to it. However, I didn't know how to tie it all together, and this tutorial was very helpful because what the guy did, which is what I ended up doing too, is he talked about how I didn't know there was an add node. I've never really discovered that before. So that was really kind of cool because I've never thought of it like that. But also the merging of the two scatters. I knew the lightning, because also lightning, it's a line, but it has to have one point at the top and one point at the bottom. But I also was thinking about this and thinking, well, how's this gonna happen? And what the guy ended up doing too, which is what I ended up doing, is he created a grid and had the dots. And what we did is we set each dot and we gave it a random color. However, the random color had a corresponding color of that same color on the bottom. So it was either on the hammer. So if there was a red dot on the hammer, let's say here, and that means at the top of the grid, like here, then that means there would have been a red dot here. So every point that's on a hammer had a corresponding point that connected it that made a line and connected to the other grid, which was really cool. And then I think the coolest thing I learned out of all this was the point VOP, because I had no idea that you could do such cool stuff with this. This was super useful for the this is what made the lightning jittery. This was instead of just doing maybe 5 or 6 custom little curves and then kind of duplicating them. But this was the real deal. And what was cool is it wasn't that hard either. Once you kind of figured out what you were doing. So what was cool is he said you put the position and what you're adding, and then and what's coming out, and the position is changing. But what was cool is he added a float vector, and what this did was it takes the 3 points. He was saying, because the vertex or something has 3 points, and he was saying that each of these in a different dimension, because one's in the X direction, one's in the Y direction, and one's in the Z direction. So in the tutorial, there's a part where it looks like lightning, but only from one side, because it's only one plane of those three of the XYZ axes is getting the noise attribute affected to it. So then he added a float vector, and then but it accounted for all three axes. And if you put on an offset, which is what you would connect it to, and then have it input with everything else, it affects it on all sides, which is how it's lightning no matter where you look, which I thought was really cool. However, also it changes since it's set to an offset, and it's set to when does it offset in every frame. It goes very fast. He chose time because he was doing like the Tesla spark, but I thought it felt too slow. So I thought, when Thor does it, the hammer comes straight down, and then like the lightning's just always there. So that was cool. Now, in the video, he that's kind of where I stopped for him, because I now was like, okay, that's all nice and dandy. However, I need to render this. And the lightning to me was, well, it's so thin, and I don't know if my computer can handle. Let's say I did a sweep, or I added a sweep and then I skinned it. I tried that. It kind of looked like spaghetti noodles were shooting out of his hammer, though. So what I ended up doing is I tried to get it where I thought I could do a VDB or a VBD to maybe convert the points to a polygon, but there wasn't one of those. I think that was just wishful thinking. So what I ended up realizing is, well, what if I just made a duplicate of the top part of the hammer and had the rest of the hammer on another? And this allows me to then just make the lightning glow while not affecting the hammer. Because I don't want the hammer to be blue too, because then that would kind of ruin it. So what I did was, when I did I then went to the material palette, and I got a glow, and I edited it a little bit, and and if you look in it, I changed it. So the big thing when it rendered was it has a bit of trouble when you don't invert. When it went like this, it looked like this, and I was like, well, that's kind of trash. So I was playing around with it, and I tried invert, and I thought it worked a lot better. I feel as if why the invert works well, that I am not sure of, which I am very curious about. I am thinking, my best guess, this might be me talking out of my butt, but my best guess was it was points on the line of the lightning that weren't as prominent when it's not inverted. And when you invert it, these little points that aren't as common as all the popular points, that like these that are shown here, the little gaps here, I was thinking that maybe it inverts and chooses those points, but it gives me a less spaghetti noodle line. But so if we go back to and then for the hammer, I just use the materials that were in the material palette. Now definitely, and then the resample was since the first like in the chandelier thing. So I knew that was going to be involved. I knew curves were going to be involved, but how getting the noise to attribute to the line, that I knew conceptually what I needed to do, but knowing here's the button that does that or whatever was very helpful for the tutorial. And now I have another skill that's in my suit where I have another skill I can add to my toolbox where I can I can animate and create noise more, because noise is super important. I mean, Photoshop, I mean, that's how you create bump map and tons of things. You can, but also for height fields, like the noise for making mountains in here is all height fields. So what I decided, but what I ended up doing was and in the video, the guy takes the scatters, but what was cool is instead of doing a parameter where, you just do 100 here and you do 100 there and you somehow make a cool link to it, he just took it and was like, look, this force total count that controls how many dots you got all over the hammer, because it controls how many dots are in the scatter. But for lightning, you got to remember, every dot corresponds to another dot and creates a line. And that basically is a lightning bolt. So whatever the scatter amount is of this line here, that's how many lightning bolts you have. So if I had this at 3,000, that'd be ridiculous. I might as well just paint the thing blue. So that was cool. So he said, and which I thought was genius, was you just take the parameter of this, you reference this, and you just paste it into the other one, and as a relative reference. And once you change the other one, and the other one works. So ultimately, it came out really cool. I thought I was very pleased with it, and you can see here each point is on the grid. But also I raised it up because I wanted to show how it interacts. And if we go to the lightning source, you can see that every point stops and goes here. And that is because of the color attribute, which if we go in the spreadsheet, which I also learned that the attribute name for color is CD, which I thought was really cool. And it gives all these random attributes to every one of the dots, which I thought in the video was super useful. And again, this is in the first link. But the rendering of it was, I eventually realized, okay, if I can just almost trick Houdini into thinking, well, since it's in the geometry node, but it's really just lines, but it all it sees is a geometry node, will it somehow kind of fool itself into thinking that, yeah, you can see the dots here. Yeah, see, they're all different colors. And each one of those has a corresponding dot. But the question is, would Houdini recognize it as, no, that's still a curve, that's not geometry? And the sweeping did not work because it's so, even with the thickness, it changes so fast because it's jittering and scattering that it would be a mess to render, and the thinness and the different varying thicknesses would be a mess. So I was able to trick it to a certain degree where if we go in the render view, and let's say we don't invert it, so I can show you what it looked like. It basically almost realized that I tricked it and then made almost geometry, made it geometry itself, which I was having trouble doing. Thinking, okay, he got us. Well, we still need to make it geometry. So Houdini was kind of, so let's just do it real quick. But what that got me was things that weren't as thick as the other lines when I was trying to, sweep the lightning lines. And it all glowed too, because you need geometry for it to glow. The curves, I was trying so hard to figure out how can I make these curves just glow by itself, because in Photoshop or anything, it's really easy to just, or I don't know about but anyway, for Photoshop, for example, no matter what, you can make anything glow and it's easy. And when I was reading on a forum, where a guy was asking for help about this too, and he was saying, yeah, in every program, it's just you click glow or something and it happens. But, so, and then another video, the guy, it was probably a paid video, but I have the link to it as well, because I did watch the trailer and I gave me some ideas. But he was saying, in this video, we'll teach you how to convert your lightning to geometry, which confirmed my idea that I did think that I knew I had to convert it back to geometry in order for the Houdini to realize, okay, this is an object, let's do it. But once I was able to trick it by just leaving it in this node, and then it just said select geometry. I basically put it in a geometry looking box, but nothing that was in it was